Hello and welcome to Off the Shelf. And I'm reading, part of Chapter 2 to Resident Evil Zero Hour. Enjoy. Billy sat on the floor between two rows of seats, working at the handcuffs with the paperclip he'd found on the floor. One of the cuffs was off, the right one, bashed open when the Jeep had gone over, but unless he wanted to be wearing a jangly and rather incriminating bracelet, he had to get the other one off. Get it off and get the hell out of here, he thought. Pushing at the lock with a thin piece of metal, he didn't look up, didn't need to remind himself of his whereabouts. He didn't have to. The air was heavy with the scent of blood. It was splattered all over the place. And although the train car he'd found was empty of bodies, he had no doubt that the other cars were full of them. The dogs. Has to be those dogs. Though, who let 'em on? The same guy they'd seen in the woods. Had to be. The guy who stepped in front of the Jeep, sending it crashing out of control. Billy had been thrown clear except for a few bruises. Was pretty much unscathed. His MP escort, Dixon and Elder, had both been trapped beneath the overturned vehicle. They'd been alive, though. The human road stop, whoever he was nowhere to be seen. It had been a tough minute or two, standing there in the gathering dark, the hot, oily smell of gas in his face, his body aching, trying to decide, run for it, or radio for help. He didn't want to die. He didn't deserve to die unless being trusting and stupid was an offense worthy of death. But he couldn't leave them either. Two men pinned under a ton of twisted metal, injured and barely conscious. Their choice to take some unpaved backwoods trail to the base meant it could be a long time before anyone happened upon them. Yeah, they were delivering him to his execution, but they were following orders. It wasn't personal, and they didn't deserve to die any more than he did. He decided to split the difference, radio for help, and then run like hell. But then the dogs had come. Big, wet, freaky-looking things, 3 of them. And then he was running for his life, because there was something very, very wrong about them. He knew it even before they had attacked Dixon, ripping his throat out as they pulled him from beneath the Jeep. Billy thought he heard a click and tried the handcuff, hissing air through his teeth when the metal latch refused to budge. Goddamn thing! The paperclip was a lucky find, though there was shit everywhere. Papers, bags, coats, personal belongings, and blood on just about all of it. Maybe he'd find something more useful if he looked harder. Though that would mean staying on the train, and that didn't sound like much fun at all. For all he knew, this was where those dogs lived. Hold up here with that crazy asshole who liked to step in front of moving cars. He'd only come aboard to avoid the dogs, to regroup, try to figure out his next move. And it turns out to be the Slaughterhouse Special, he thought, shaking his head. Talk about the frying pan into the fire. Whatever the hell was going on in these woods, he didn't want to be a part of it. He'd get the cuff off, find himself some kind of weapon, maybe grab a wallet or two out of all the blood-splattered luggage. He had no doubt that the owners were long past caring, and hightail it back to civilization, then Canada or Mexico maybe. He'd never stolen before, never considered leaving the country, but he had to think like a criminal now if he wanted to survive. He heard thunder, then gentle taps of rain against some of the unbroken windows. The taps became a tattoo. the blood-scented air thinning with the gusts of wind through a shattered pane. Dandy. Apparently, he'd be hiking out in a rainstorm. Whatever, he mumbled, and threw the useless paper clip against the seat in front of him. The situation was seriously foobar. He doubted it could get much worse. Billy froze, held his breath. The outside door of the train was opening. He could hear the metal sliding, the rain getting louder, then quieter again. Someone had come aboard. Shit! What if it was the maniac with the dogs? Or what if someone found the jeep? He felt a sick, heavy knot in his stomach. Could be. Could be that someone else from the base had decided to use the back road tonight. Maybe had already called in when they'd seen the crash and learned that there should have been a third passenger, a certain dead man walking. Maybe he was already being hunted. He didn't move, straining to hear the movements of whoever had come in from the rain. For a few seconds, nothing. Then he heard a soft tread, one step, then another, moving away from him toward the front of the car. Billy leaned forward, carefully sliding his dog tags under his collar so they wouldn't jingle, moving slowly until he could see around the edge of the aisle seat. Someone was stepping through the connecting door. Thin, short, a girl, or young man, maybe, dressed in a Kevlar vest and army green. He could just make out a few letters on the back of the vest, an S, a T, an A, and then he or she was gone. Stars. Had they sent out a team looking for him? Couldn't be. Not so fast. The jeep had crashed maybe an hour ago, tops, and the Stars didn't have a military affiliation. They were a PD offshoot. No one would have called them in. It probably had to do with the dogs he saw. Obviously some mutant feral pack. The Stars usually dealt with the weird shit that local cops couldn't or wouldn't handle. Or maybe they'd come in to investigate whatever had gone down on the train. Doesn't matter. Why, does it? They'll have guns. And if they figure out who you are, this taste of freedom will be your last. Get out of here. Now. With man-eating dogs running around in the woods. Not without a weapon. No way. There had to be some kind of security on board. A rented uniform with a gun. He just had to look. It would be a risk with the Stars on board, but there was only one of them, after all, if he had to. Billy shook his head. He'd seen his share of death in special forces. If it came down to it here and now, he'd fight. Or run. He wouldn't kill, not ever again. At least not one of the good guys. Billy crawled to his feet, keeping low, the handcuffs dangling from his wrist. He looked through the stuff in the car. First, then, move away from the Stars' interloper and see what he could find. No point in having a confrontation if it could be avoided. He just bam, bam, bam. 3 shots from the car ahead. A pause. Then 4 more. Then nothing. Apparently not all the train cars were empty. The knot in his stomach tightened, but he didn't let it slow him down as he picked up the first briefcase he saw and started to dig. Well, that's it for the... I'll read you the rest of it soon. Talk to you later. End.